Here's how to use Instagram as a funnel to direct clients and patients to you. Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, we have a super special guest because she actually, surprisingly, despite her online presence, hasn't done that many podcasts. We've got Dr. Johanna B. Moore, who's a triple board certified physician, a serial entrepreneur, a business coach for women physicians, who's trained at top programs, including The Ohio State, Mass General, and other Harvard-affiliated hospitals, and UCSF. And in her coaching company called She Is Money, she helps women physicians and other high-income earners create scalable income through a course and a community and to market it on Instagram without being weird, awkward, or pushy. So, Dr. Moore, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
So, first question, how do we avoid being weird, awkward, or pushy on social media if we are any or all of these in real life?
That's a great question. That's a question I've never been asked before because most of the people I work with are not weird, awkward, or pushy. But if you are, and I do know and love some physicians who are weird, awkward, and pushy, I think that the bigger question is, are you being authentic? I know that there were some people, especially when I was at Mass General, who were very alpha, apex type people. And they did give people that feeling of like, this person always knows what they're talking about, or at least 99% of the time they know what they're talking about. And if they don't know what they're talking about, we can't tell. And they're going to tell me what they want me to do. And some of them we just listen to because they were our leaders.
Yeah.
And those people have a place in our society, especially as doctors. We need them because they're the ones who tell us what to do when everything's going bad and people are crashing and we're sitting there wondering what we're supposed to do next. And they're the ones yelling at you, telling you to put oxygen on their damn face. So they're a really important part of our community. And if you are a person like that who has that understanding, I think sometimes I overstep. Sometimes I am pushing what I want to say or what I think is right more than maybe I want to. First of all, you could get coaching for that. And secondly, if you don't want to get coaching for that and you want to keep your personality the way it is, that's okay too. But you just have to own it on social media as well. Okay. And what I mean is that a lot of times physicians who are trying to sell their own practice, or maybe they do something exciting like build a product and they have to sell it, or they move into the coaching or the education arena and they're trying to build that part of their practice or that part of their side gig. It's really scary for physicians to talk about money and to ask people for money because we never do it in our careers. We just do our job, help people, and then the billing comes because the biller told everybody what codes it was and everything was good. And so when you get into
it ends up coming back to us. Sometimes it ends up coming back like, oh,
yeah, and we don't care
for X, Y, and Z.
We don't care.
It costs me this much. No, but the patients will sometimes be like, this is way too expensive. Like, can you write this off? And then we're like put in this position of like, wait, I don't even get to decide my own value. That was negotiated by someone else. And now you're telling me that the value that was decided by two other parties, I'm not actually worth, or you can't afford, or like, and we don't know what to do in that situation. So we've divorced ourselves from it. And then when it comes back to us, it gets even more challenging.
That's a really beautiful point that I never really thought about that way. I know in my relationship with money, I had to do a lot of work convincing myself that I was good enough to earn money. And I didn't even really know that that was there until I sort of really wanted to excel in the financial arena and separate that from my position as a doctor. And I started to realize that it was coming up repetitively that like I would not do something and I would wonder why, because it seemed illogical that that would help me. And I just wouldn't do it. And I finally realized after a lot of work on myself that I had this thought that I didn't really deserve that much money. It's very interesting. And every once in a while, maybe you'll go on a trip or you'll have some sort of cost that is going to be reimbursed by your employer. And there was a point in my life where I would file for the reimbursement and I would get the check back and I would hold the check for a really long time. And like the HR people would say, like, can you please cash that check? And I don't know, I never knew why I was doing that. And in retrospect, it was this weird thing that I was going through that was like, well, if I cash it, they might ask for it back. So
Not
I think that's
actually
really
worth this much.
interesting. Yeah. And I
Makes
think
sense.
that part of it is the whole physician payment structure
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, we're so separated from it. And we go through all this training where we're convinced that we're not worth that much, right? When you're a medical student, when you're a resident, you get like ground down, and then finally you're an attending, and like that's supposed to somehow just shift.
My daughter said something to me that really made me think for a long time a while ago. And she said, you know, Mom, there are people on Instagram who idolize you. And we had this whole conversation about it. And at first I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it and I thought, well, I do have 1,000 followers and some of them are always popping and they actually are listening to what I'm saying and they actually end up buying my programs. I kind of had to step back and give myself a little bit more credit for that. And I think as physicians, your patients idolize you. Most of them do. And we don't really think about it that much. Like every once in a while, you have a good day where somebody gave you a present or they told you something that impacted them. And then that makes you feel good. But most of the time, we don't really hear that. We just see people who are in pain or who are uncomfortable. And we don't really get that real satisfaction of hearing that, yeah, we actually know something and we actually are really good at it. And we're actually doing a good thing.
We bring a lot of value. We bring a lot of value. I want all the listeners to say that in their head, or if you're in your car, say it out loud right now. I bring a lot of value. I bring a lot of value to my patients, my community, to this world. I bring a lot of value.
Yes. And another thing that's really interesting that a lot of doctors don't think about is that the amount of information that you learned in medical school and training is so vast. The amount of information that you use daily is so small. And so we go through so much broad training and then we get into practice and we do rhinectomies all day long or whatever it is. And we forget how much more we have to offer if we wanted to. And I think that's how I segue into the entrepreneurial world or the podcasting world or the social media world is how do you broaden yourself a little bit so that you can relate more to the common person, to the population who is listening to you, who has eyes on you. Sometimes it's not just that you can help them with whatever they come in to see you. Sometimes it's a lot broader than that.
So we've been talking a lot about like general ideas, and I try to get down to brass tacks as much as, give my listeners something to do today or tomorrow.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. Let's get into that. And so give us the keys to the castle, right? How do we grow our social media presence so that our followers are customers and not bots? I'll give you an example, right? Like I decided to put I wanted to see if increasing my Instagram followers would increase my downloads, right? Because my currency is listeners. So I have an Instagram page so that people can find me, but Instagram is not my business, right? So what I did is I put a sizable chunk of money into an ad on one episode, and I just blasted that ad out. So it would go across a bunch of there's a way to tailor it, to boost it, so it goes specifically to doctors. And I found zero increase in my downloads. So even though I grew my social media presence, and a lot of the people that ended up following me after that were physicians, they didn't convert to listeners. So it's finding people who are going to be your customers. So how do we grow our social media presence with that specific idea in mind?
Yes, I completely understand what you're talking about. It's something that everyone goes through. The key to the castle is that you need to understand marketing, general marketing, and you need to understand that your content could be completely amazing. You could have the perfect product. You could be the perfect coach. But if you don't understand how to find the people who are really interested and need your product and to tell them in a way that they find compelling, then you won't grow. Because people will like you and they'll follow you and they'll see what you're doing and they'll cheer you on and make you feel good, but they won't really commit because they don't actually see why it benefits them. So, and that's unfortunately why, and I have done it too myself in past years, is you decide to put out an ad and you spend some money on it so that you can see some more eyes can see it, but the message itself wasn't strong enough to begin with. And the way that you can fix that is by knowing a couple of tricks, and I can talk about that, but also that you need to test it with people. And you need to test it with people who you already know are your perfect clients. So for instance, you, Brad, in your podcast, there's probably a handful of people who talk to you about your podcast all the time, who say like, oh, I just listened to that one that you did and I really like this part, or, who like really cheer you on. Those are the people that you go to and you ask them, can we sit down with a cup of coffee, or can I give you a Starbucks card? And I can just pick your mind about like, what exactly is it that you like? What are you getting out of it? What is the goal that you're trying to achieve that I'm helping you with, at least partially? And when you find out those specific things, then number one, it helps you to really narrow down exactly what your message is. And number two, it allows you to find those people, those same people who have the same need, who understand that you could actually fix it.
You find your current customer and you ask them, why are you my customer?
Yeah. Why? Like, what brought you to me? What was the thing that you were working on or that you were working through that you happened to come to my podcast and you listened to one and something happened where you started coming back because you felt like it was helping you in some way? Maybe it was a mindset thing. Maybe it was, like you said, like you like talking about what facts, what things can I do right now to help myself? Maybe it was something like that, but they'll tell you what it was and they'll tell you what their problem was. And then they'll tell you if the problem's been solved or how your product has helped them solve part of it. And the other really great question is, what else did you try? That's a great question because it tells you that they actually, yes. What else did you try? Like for me, like, I'm so excited that you joined the society. It's such a great place. You seem happy in it. Why didn't you decide to go? Why did you decide to start a course? Why didn't you go take Devin Gimbel's course and figure out how to earn points? What was the difference? And a lot of times, a lot of people in my program will say, I did that. Oh. And I really liked it. And you know what that tells me? That gives me proof that they're willing to pay for something. And that's huge.
So there's the pain point that you think you're solving for versus the pain point that you're actually solving for. So
yes.
I think when I create my episodes, I'm helping people in a certain way, or if I'm creating a webinar and a course, this is what I think people want versus asking your customers. You're basically doing market research. You're doing market research on your known market. And if they're already your followers, and if they're already your, I don't know, that's followers. That sounds a little demeaning. If they're already your listeners, your
community,
they're going to be probably pretty open and willing because they just, appreciate being part of the community and appreciate the work that you're doing and want to like spread the gospel that this is the cool stuff I learned here. I wish more people could learn it and the world would be a better place. So I really like that. You're doing market research on the market you already have, not with the market you already have, not the market you're looking towards, because you might end up looking in the wrong place.
Yes, you might be looking at the wrong market and you might be asking, you might be answering a question that they don't really want answered in public. It's different once they start listening to your podcast. There's a lot of things that you can bring to the table. And that's a problem with a lot of people when they say, I don't want to niche down. Like, I feel like I'm missing my audience if I niche down. Well, it's not like you're telling people you can't listen to my podcast if you're not a physician. It's more like, well, I talk about what physicians do. So like naturally physicians are going to come. And so that's who I should look for first. If someone who's not a physician loves my podcast, that's great. So that's really important.
Let's say you're starting from scratch, right? You want to build a business, or you're starting and it's really small. So you don't really have many customers yet to do this type of research with. where would that person look?
Yeah, I have a woman like that in my program right now. She built a course and nobody's buying it, and she still has a really small following, and she doesn't really know what to do. And what I told her is very similar to what I told you about market research with your current audience, but it's with the people who are already kind of interested in what she's doing. So there are people who are reaching out to her, liking her stuff, asking her specific questions for them.
Yeah.
And so her job is to find at least 3 of those people, hopefully 12 or 20, and to sit down with them and say, okay, I helped you with this. What else do you need help with? Would you be interested in these other things that I cover in my course? If you're not, what would be something that would be helpful for you? And the question about, have you tried anything before is really, really important in that situation as well, because that tells you 2 things. It tells you, one, that they really are invested in trying to solve the problem. So if they haven't even Googled it, this is not a big problem for them. They're just complaining. Yeah. And if they haven't paid something for it, then maybe they might not pay for yours. I mean, you could try, but the more invested they are, I mean, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in figuring out business and coaching. I'm invested. Like, I'm not going to quit.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to buy something else pretty soon. That's a really great way to read someone. And there's a book that I really liked when I started doing market research that helped me a lot. It's called The Mom Test. I don't remember the author, Rob Fitzpatrick, maybe. It's a really great book because it talks about how a lot of times, like for you, Brad, you might go to your favorite audience and talk to them and they're like, you're so good. It's so great. We love it. We will always be here. And that's like because they like you, but it doesn't tell you what drove them to you. It just, it's like vanity.
It's also why they're staying, but maybe not why they found you. And so why they found you is really what you need to identify so that more people can find you.
So you have to get to the facts and you have to get rid of all of the bias that's happening. Like when you do a study in academia, you have to get rid of all the bias, right? It's the same thing when you're doing market research. You have to get rid of all that bias. You have to ask them questions that they can't fake. Oh, you really liked my podcast? What was the last one you listened to? And then they're on the spot, right? Oh, okay, you listened to the one 3 months ago. Well, okay, what was so great about that one? And so you have to really dial it down.
It's also like you have a bakery and you think you make the best bundt cakes in the world. Best bundt cakes. They're so delicious. Nobody's ever had a bundt cake like that. And everybody goes to your bakery for the chocolate chip cookies, right? Like, some people are buying the bundt cake and you're like super proud of this bundt cake, but really it's the cookies that they come for and that they're going to tell their friends about and they're going to come back for. And so you need to be willing to pivot and find there's going to be an audience for you, but you can keep making it because that's what you love to do. But really, it's still a business. You got to keep those cookies coming and maybe come up with some different varieties of cookies. Find out what they like about the cookies. So like it might not be what you think it is, or even why you're doing it. You got to be willing to pivot a little bit and take the feedback. And that's sometimes the hard thing to do. Is the feedback. Like, this is what we really love about your show. And you're like, really?
I hate that part.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. And the key to that is you don't necessarily have to stop the bundt cake baking, like you said, but you have to advertise the cookies.
Yes.
So the bundt cake's still there. People will figure it out, but it's the cookies that people want. So you have to advertise for that.
Okay. So how do we advertise the cookies?
Not very many people know this about Instagram, but Instagram is formulated perfectly for a marketing funnel. Instagram, the reason whatever platform you decide to choose, and I actually used to have a podcast. I used to interview on podcasts and had my own podcast, and I dropped it because I just couldn't do all of it at one time, and I really wanted to focus on one. So I focused on Instagram.
Stuff. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, whatever platform you decide to be on, you need to understand why that platform is there. In Instagram, they talk about it on social media. Instagram has profiles that talk about what's cool and what they think they like and what their point of doing things are. So if you follow like Adam Mosseri, who's the CEO of Instagram, he answers questions every day in a reel. So he tells you exactly what Instagram is about. Instagram is there to connect with other people and to share things that you find interesting. So you go out and you find interesting things and then you share them with your friends. That's the whole point of Instagram. And that's why I chose Instagram. That's why I love Instagram over, like a more professional platform to market my marketing, because I feel like that's exactly what my community is like. We're a bunch of friends who really just want to connect over things that we really like to talk about. In my case, it's money. So this is how the funnel works in Instagram. This is really cool. I didn't learn this until actually recently, like it didn't all click together. So I'm really excited to share it with you. Instagram has stories, it has posts, it has reels, and then it has the DM section. Reels, especially right now, maybe for the past 2 years, you've probably heard like Reels is the way to go. That's favored by Instagram. That's the way that you'll see the most people and they'll be able to come and become your followers. That's true.
And sorry, reels are the ones that still not good at this. So posts stay forever. Stories are done after 24 hours. And then am I correct in those two?
Yes.
And
so
then what are reels?
Reels and
I know,
posts.
I sound like such a boomer.
No, it's okay. Reels and posts. I have something funny to say about that. Reels and posts are what you create on that show up in your feed. And reels are the little movies, and posts, it's a little confusing because you can do movies on posts too, but most people do like a still quote or a carousel where they walk you through something that they learned or something that's interesting to them. And both of those show up on your post and they go out to other people's feeds. So your feed is sort of like the channel when you open, like things float down and you kind of look through them. That's the feed. And reels have historically, when they came on the market, when they came on Instagram, I think it's probably been four years or so since they came on, people really grew to like reels and to realize that they're being promoted more than other things. And the reason why is because Instagram initially, and maybe you were one of the first people on Instagram, I was, but I did it for fun. It was a cool thing where you could take a picture and then you could edit it on Instagram and make it look really cool. And then you could share it with your friends. So that's how Instagram started. But now Instagram is really a lot like YouTube. It's a video-based platform where people want to watch stuff. And it's short version. So people want to watch stuff. Like they say that your span of attention on Instagram, if somebody doesn't hook you, going back to, making sure that your advertisement is done correctly. If something doesn't hook you in the first 0.2 seconds, you'll scroll past. So that's kind of, and then stories are what shows up at the top of your feed. And so if you are on your account and you're looking, you have your feed, things are popping up and you can see, oh, Johanna just posted something. And then on the top, you can see certain faces of people. And if you click on those, are their stories. And those are 24 hours. And it's whatever they're posting during that day. So you know that it's live. And then
so what you're saying is people predominantly aren't going to find reels more so, and Instagram promotes reels more. So if we're trying to market ourselves, we should be creating more reels, but we have to make it so compelling that our listener doesn't scroll past. And so what we should be doing is talking to those customers, finding out what got them to come to us and stick around, and then creating our content that speaks to that so we can find people more like them.
Yes, you got it. So reels are the bottom of your funnel.
And so how do we do that? How do we create? I mean, for me, like I've never used Canva. And again, I'm such a boomer with this stuff. My wife is super savvy with her Instagram for her businesses. So, where do we even begin?
Well, the cool thing is that the more into Instagram that I get, the less tech I use. And the reason why goes back to the weird and creepy comment is that you really want to be as authentic as you can be on Instagram. They really wanted to feel like you just ran into a friend and you're hanging out.
Oh my gosh. You know what? Those drive me nuts though. Like I'm looking at someone and they're like putting on their sunscreen while they're talking to their phone. You know it's canned. You know that they had to set up their ring light and their room just right and clean the area. It's not spontaneous, but it's made to look spontaneous because they're putting on their skin creams or like, washing their face or whatever it is while they're talking to you.
It's also a trick. They may not know most of the people who do this probably don't realize that, but it's a psychological trick because they're doing things while they're talking to you about something. So you're listening to what they're saying, but you're interested in what they're doing, even if it's subliminally. So
It's like,
it's
oh,
actually
hey,
a hook.
it's nice to see you. You just happened to walk by as I was doing this. Let me talk to you.
There's definitely a lot of that. I personally don't stage very much. I mean, look at me,
Okay.
I'm here in my morning bun because I find that what I say and what I can teach is so much more important than that I don't care as much. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm lucky because I'm already cute and I already like look okay coming out of bed. So there's different, what you're talking about is that's really more of the influencer side of Instagram. Instagram
Okay.
has two different categories of business people. It
Okay.
has influencers, and those are the people who get a lot of brand deals. And maybe they're selling something of their own, but usually not. Usually they're pushing you to Amazon or they're pushing you to makeup or something like that. The other side, and that's the side that I believe most physicians move into. Some physicians are really amazing influencers out there, and you probably know all of them. But
Yeah.
the ones who really just like have a product or a course or a coaching business, or they want you to go to their practice, those are in the entrepreneurial side. So there's entrepreneurs and then there's influencers. Entrepreneurs are a little bit more serious and they talk about education and content. And influencers, they show you what is possible. So they want to show
Okay.
you what kind of sunscreen they're putting on because it's baby bum and it costs $20 a tube. So there's that, but there is the science behind it that the influencers may not know about is it is a distraction in the video. And so it's like a hook, like
Okay.
you're watching it. Have you ever seen on YouTube, somebody is talking about something that happened, telling a story or something like that. And on the side, there's like a picture of someone drawing. It's the same thing. Like you get kind of tied into the drawing. It's like mesmerizing, but you're also listening to what they have to say.
And those are like usually people commenting on other people's videos. Like the person drawing is like drawing a picture of the person who's doing the thing, or they're like interwoven somehow. But
Sometimes
that's not what.
sometimes they're not.
So I'm still not clear on like how we leverage that.
So let me finish explaining to you how the funnel works, and then we can go back
Yeah.
and you can ask me specifically what you're asking. So reels are the way that you reach the most people. If you look on your reels now, even if you're not getting a lot of people watching it, you'll see that the percentage of people who are seeing it is non-followers is very high.
Okay.
If you have a reel that does well, you'll see 97%, 99% non-followers, which means Instagram thinks that people find what you're saying interesting and it's pushing it out to people who might be interested. Going back to the main point of Instagram is like their Instagram is trying to take your product and send it to people who might like it. They're on our side. And that's why it's so important on Instagram to talk about what you want people to know about.
Like often the pain point that you're solving for.
Yes. And,
Okay.
to a lesser extent, it is important to share your brand and who you are as a person. And, like you may talk a little bit about how you're an ENT and other ENTs might see that and be interested in what you're doing. So that's important to you, but maybe not for you brushing your teeth or talking about, some people, they kind of go back and forth between trying to be an influencer and trying to be an entrepreneur. And that just confuses Instagram and everybody else. So reels are the bottom of the funnel. The next step up from the funnel are your posts. And I personally find that carousels do much better than other posts. Some people, they put really great quotes like from Rumi or, from their own quotes. And those do really well. A lot of people will do like their Twitter posts. and those do really well for them. So you kind of have to test around and find what's good for you. For me, I find carousels work really well because I can kind of tell a story and people like to hear about that. Posts don't reach as many followers, so people often think that posts aren't doing very well. But actually, posts are really important because they're shown to more of your followers who are more engaged and less non-followers. And those are the people who are actually warm and more interested in what you're talking about and might start watching your podcast on a regular basis. So it's kind of like you're going into the inner circle. Is like now you're talking to people who you really want to be in your group. Maybe reels might be a little like you might do like a viral, hop on one of the viral trends or something like that.
So reels, you're like fishing, and
Yes.
posts are more for people that are like, they're either already a listener and they might not have heard that episode, or they're more likely to be, they're already a follower and you can convert them into a listener. Okay.
Exactly. And that's the point. I mean, when you're talking about pushing your agenda and you ask them, give them a call to action, it's people respond to the call to action on a reel or a carousel more than they do on a post or a carousel more than on a reel. Because on a reel, they're just scrolling. But on a post or carousel, they've stopped and they've thought about it and they want to see what you have to say. Okay, so let me quickly tell you about stories, because stories are your most inner circle. In order for somebody to see a story, they have to be following you and they have to click on the thing that shows what you're doing. And so those are the things, the secrets that you tell. And that's a really great place to pitch
information.
Yeah, privileged information. Yeah. And that's a really great place to pitch what you're talking about as well, because you know that they're already interested.
Got it. So if you're like selling a course, the story is where you're selling the course.
Yes.
The reel is
the hardest.
Yes. So the reel is finding more followers. The posts are engaging with the followers, and the stories are where you try and hook them and get them to purchase whatever it is you are.
It's a deeper engagement. Yes.
Yeah.
Where you're answering more of their specific questions. And you could do market research there as well.
Great idea. Great idea. Okay. So as we are coming to a close, any one last point that you'd like to make? Maybe there's something that we didn't cover that you were hoping to get to.
Oh, man. Time went by so fast. We'll have to have a second episode for sure. I would have to say that when you are on social media, the most important thing is to be completely authentic and just be honest with yourself and with everybody else, and to be proud of whatever it is that you're selling.
And for all the listeners out there, you have a lot to be proud of. Dr. Johanna Moore, thank you so much for your time. And people can find you at She Is Money, right? On Instagram. And where else can people find you?
sheismoney.llc.
sheismoney.llc. Is there a website that you have, or anywhere else where people can find you?
It's not worth it. Just go to Instagram.
No, all on Instagram, which is your thing. Your thing is building your business on Instagram. So She Is Money LLC. Well, Dr. Moore, thank you so much for your time and all that you're doing to help our physician entrepreneurs.
I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for listening. So please share it, or like it, or comment on a social media post, or write us a 5-star review. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.